Forget boring sandwiches, canned soup, or cookies from a bag. While many of us can feel pressed for time at lunch, there are some great options out there that are nutritious and easy to make. Today I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite fast, fresh lunch recipes. Who doesn't love a steaming hot bowl of soup for lunchtime? It's a popular food all around the world, and for good reason. It's comforting, it's satisfying, and it's also quite nutritious, especially when you add in some powerhouse ingredients like spinach, miso, and so forth. Today I'm going to show you how you can make miso soup in just 10 minutes. We're going to start with some vegetable broth because I like to make mine vegetarian as it traditionally would be done in Japan. And we're just going to add 2 cups of vegetable broth to our pan. You could easily use chicken if you prefer chicken stock. You could even use water if you don't have broth on hand. And then you just need to amp up the flavor of your add-ins a little bit more so that you can balance it out and get that nice, rich, satisfying taste. So to flavor it up, we're going to add some sesame oil and a little bit of sriracha. And then we're going to bring that to a boil. Once it's boiling, then we're going to add in some chopped spinach and some green onions and some nori. The nori is the seaweed sheets that you see for sale any place they sell sushi making supplies. And that's a really traditional ingredient, and it also adds a lot of nutrition. So we're just going to chop up our green onion. I like to use just the green part so it's not too overpowering in the soup. Oh, it's getting nice and hot over there. We'll just give it a little stir. And the important thing with miso soup is not to add the miso paste to the hot soup. Otherwise, it's going to kill all the nutritional ingredients in there. It's packed with antioxidants. It's considered by many people to be a real cancer-fighting ingredient. But if it comes to a boil, you're losing those benefits. So instead, what we're going to do is warm it with some of the hot broth. There, that's probably enough onions to top our soup with. And while we're waiting for the broth to finish heating, we're just going to give the spinach a little chop. If you put the whole leaves in your soup, they're going to be a little bit hard to get onto your spoon. So a quick chop just solves that problem. There we go. Okay, it's looking hot, so I'm going to put the miso right into my serving bowl. And this is about 2 teaspoons of miso paste for 1 generous serving of soup. And I'm going to ladle about ½ a cup of hot broth. You can see it's steaming nicely here onto the miso, just a little bit more, and we'll give it a stir. And it's good to use a whisk for this because you really want the thick miso to break down and become nice and smooth. You might be left with a little bit of a good granularness in the bottom, but that's okay. So now we've got this all set, and we're going to add in the nori and the spinach. And this just needs to cook long enough for the spinach to wilt. And we'll save the green onions for our garnish. There we go. And I'm just going to give this another little final whisk so we can see the miso breaking up nicely. And now that the spinach is starting to wilt, I'm going to put the tofu into the soup pot. Even people who don't like tofu probably won't mind it, or it won't offend them in their miso soup because it gets nice and soft and it takes on the flavor of the soup, the nice heat from the sriracha and the sweetness of the sesame oil. So another minute for the spinach to wilt. What we're going to finish off with is a little bit of fish sauce, and the reason that we don't add that into the soup while it's cooking is, first off, you'll lose the flavor. It'll boil away and become very bland, and also when you put the fish sauce into a boiling pot, it tends to kind of boil out and you get this unpleasant aroma, and that's where the flavor's being lost. So we're going to add that in at the very end once we put it in our bowl. So now we're going to just ladle this into our bowl. It smells so good. It's just so fragrant. I like to have miso soup whenever I'm feeling under the weather because I can make just 1 bowl for me so quickly. It just seems to comfort me, and also I think it really does have healing properties. The Japanese certainly believe so. And we'll just put this last little bit in. So you can see it makes a nice generous sized bowl full. Now we're going to add in our fish sauce. This is about 5 dashes of fish sauce. You may find that that's not strong enough for you, or you may find it too strong. So you kind of have to experiment with the flavor. And we're going to just stir that in. We'll top it with our green onions. And now our beautiful lunch is ready. Up next, I'm going to show you that while musical mashups are great, food mashups are even better. I'm going to take a dish that's normally associated with Italy and infuse it with Asian flavors to come up with a whole new creation that I think you're really going to love. When I'm teaching cooking classes, one of the questions I get most often is how to handle leftover herbs. We all love the flavor of fresh herbs in our dishes, but you buy a big bunch, you use a little bit, you put the rest in the fridge, and before long it's sad and brown and you have to throw it out. So I've come up with a great way to store those fresh herbs, keep their flavor, and ensure that you're not wasting them. What I do is chop up the leftovers, put them in a Ziploc bag with a little bit of oil, and freeze them. That way, whenever you want a taste of cilantro, a little bit of chives, especially in the winter when herbs are more expensive, you can just open the bag, crack off a corner, and toss it in your soup, your stew, your sauce, whatever you're making. It's a really great way to make sure that you don't let those beautiful herbs go to waste. Excited to show you now has become one of my new favorite lunch creations. It's taking the traditional Vietnamese sandwich called banh mi, which is basically a submarine with pickled vegetables, sriracha mayo, lots of meat, and turning it into a salad form, much like the Tuscan bread salad. So we're going to start by heating up some rice vinegar and a little bit of sugar. And that's going to be our pickling liquid for our carrots, which are the customary vegetables in a banh mi sandwich. So it doesn't take too long for that to dissolve, and you want it warm rather than cold so that it'll actually pickle the carrots just ever so slightly. While that's heating up, we're going to prepare the mayonnaise. So we've got just any kind of mayonnaise you like. There, you can use the vegan ones if you prefer, any kind you like. And we're going to add in some soy sauce for a nice hit of flavor, and also sriracha, because that's very customary. The Vietnamese sandwiches always have a nice bit of heat. So you just need to stir that together to make a nice smooth paste. It'll take a minute to incorporate the soy sauce because it's so thin. But you're going to be spreading it on with a knife, so don't worry if it's not perfectly incorporated. There we go. And it's great made with day-old baguette if you have any left over, or even if you've got half a baguette in the freezer and you don't know what to do with it, because it will toast up more quickly if it's not super fresh. So here I've got half a baguette all sliced up, and we're going to just spread it with the mayo. And then you're going to toast this to add more flavor to it. So we've got a pan here. We're just going to get them all lined up and get them in the toaster. I thought about this dish after eating a lot of Vietnamese food on a recent trip, and I reminded myself how much I like those fresh flavors. They tend to not be as spicy as some other Asian cuisines, and they're packed with usually a lot of fresh herbs and fresh vegetables. So I was thinking about new ways that I could prepare Vietnamese dishes at home, and this just kind of came to me in a brainwave, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you like things that are really spicy, you can obviously add more sriracha. You could also use something like chili garlic paste or sambal olik if you want a more complex flavor. Just 2 more to go here. And the reason for toasting is that it really locks the flavor of the mayonnaise into the bread. Otherwise, it's going to kind of slide off in the salad. So we're just going to pop that in and just give it a few minutes in there. While the bread is toasting, we're going to check on our pickling liquid. I think it's all set now. So we're going to just drizzle that over the carrots. And those are 2 medium-sized carrots that we've shredded. So if you're wanting to try and speed up your lunch routine, you could easily put the carrots into the pickle the night before or in the morning, or even just make your brine up ahead of time. And I've put this in a broad, shallow bowl so that they can kind of sit nicely in the liquid. So there we go. Now we're going to slice up some ham because the Vietnamese sandwiches, always have meat component in it. Sometimes it's like a pate, sometimes it's a sliced meat, but I just thought ham would be a nice combination and a little bit of a nod to the Italian roots since they make some terrific ham in Italy. Just coarsely chop it. It doesn't have to be in any specific size. And I'm putting it back on the plate rather than in the bowl so we can layer the salad together in the bowl, and that means that we won't have to manipulate it as much. We've also got half an English cucumber chopped up, and that adds, again, more crunch and bright color, which I really like. The last thing that we're going to get ready in the vegetable department is some fresh cilantro. That's really typical of Vietnamese food. And you can add a lot if you're a big cilantro fan. Some people don't like it. I like it, but in moderation, as I find it can take over the flavor of a dish if you're not careful. So we've got that chopped up and ready to go. So now we're going to check on our broiler and see how our bread is doing. Yeah, it's looking like it's getting nice and bubbly on the top. So we're going to take that out. And then we're just going to transfer the bread carefully with our fingers, because it's pretty hot, to our cutting board. And with a bread salad, typically the bread is cubed so that it's easier to eat. You could put the whole baguette slices in and then serve it up in a really rustic form, but today I think I am going to cube it up a little bit just to make it easier. So if we just cut each slice into 4, that's a good proportion, and we'll start putting those in the bowl, and then we'll layer in our other ingredients. I can smell the bread now, and it smells so good. I'm getting the soya, I'm getting the sriracha. It's a really, really great flavor. You can easily double or triple this recipe. It'll take a little bit longer to broil up the bread and prepare the other ingredients, but it's a great crowd-pleasing meal. And when you prepare it, you can make it about 4 hours ahead of time. After that, the bread is going to start to get a little bit soggy, so I would recommend not putting the final dressing on until you are ready to serve. When I look out at these ingredients, it reminds me of going to Chinatown and eating beautiful rice paper rolls, the different things that you get to assemble yourself by piling all the fresh ingredients on. And that's a very fond memory, so I'm happy to see this. So now we're going to sprinkle the ham on. Get it all in there. I just used a traditional smoked ham. You could use really any kind that you want. We're going to add the cucumbers. We're going to add the carrots, but when we do this, we want to be careful to leave some of the pickling liquid behind. So I'm going to give them just a little bit of a squeeze as I put them in the bowl. I'm going to pull it over here a little closer so it's easier for me to work. You can still see they've not lost their bright fresh color, but they've got a much better flavor than if they were just raw carrots. The pickling really adds a nice level of complexity. So now what we're going to do is make our dressing, which is some canola oil, sesame oil to give it that nice Asian pop, and then about 2 tablespoons of the pickling liquid. So and it doesn't matter if you get some carrots in there because it's going right on the salad. So there's 1. That wasn't quite a full one, so we'll add a little bit more. There we go. And again, doing the dressing in a little jar is so much easier than a bowl because you can just give it a good shake and it's ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is give the salad a toss ahead of time because I really want to make sure all the ingredients are going to meet the dressing when it goes in there. So now I can see some bread, I can see some ham, I can see the carrots and the cucumbers. And it doesn't look like much dressing, but remember that the bread already has some flavor infused on it, the carrots are pickled, and you don't want it to get too soggy. So there you go, you've drizzled your dressing on. Give it one more quick light toss. And then we're going to just sprinkle the cilantro on and our salad is ready to go. I think you'll find this a really nice change of pace from eating sandwiches. You're getting all the satisfying bread and delicious fillings, but it just somehow seems a lot lighter and fresher when you prepare it this way. And you could easily pack that and take it to work as well. Coming up next, I'm going to show you a great new way to make cheesecake. Personally, I'm a big fan of the crust, so I thought, why not put the fruit on the bottom and let the crust shine on top? Best of all, you can make these cute little mini cheesecakes up to 2 days in advance. Cheesecake might seem like a decadent option for lunch, but sometimes we all have to treat ourselves. I love these adorable little mini cheesecakes because it's a perfectly balanced serving with all the flavors that you like, but you don't have to feel guilty about it because it's not too big. We're going to start off with some softened cream cheese, which we're going to mash up with a little bit of sugar and 1 egg. This is my favorite kind of a cheesecake base. You might have your own with sour cream or different ingredients. You can use that as well. You just have to be sure that it's one that will set fairly quickly because these cheesecakes have a pretty short baking time. It'll take just a minute for it to come together. If you're impatient like I usually am in the kitchen, grab a whisk and that'll speed things up quite nicely. So I'm just going to quickly whisk this together. You just want to make sure the egg's incorporated. It's all right if there's still a few lumps of cream cheese because those will smooth out during the baking time. As I mentioned, you can make these cheesecakes ahead of time, and that's really great, whether it's for a lunch or even a brunch or a dinner, and they store really nicely in the fridge. You'll just want to be sure to bring them out of the fridge about an hour before serving so that they're not too cold. There we go. We've got our cheesecake mixture all ready. Now, I mentioned the fruit goes on the bottom, and that's kind of fun because then people don't know what fruit you're serving. And you can make it even shorter by using your favorite fruit jam. So I've got some lovely homemade blueberry jam. I've made these with cherry jam, strawberry jam, even pineapple rhubarb, and that was delicious. So you're going to start by spooning just enough fruit to cover the bottom of your dish. Depending on the size of your oven-safe ramekins, it's probably going to be about a tablespoon or so. Some sites on the internet will suggest that you can bake cheesecake in little mason jars. I don't recommend that as the glass is not actually oven safe, and there have been incidents of the glass jars exploding either in the oven or when they're taken out from the oven and subjected to a temperature differential. So I encourage you to use oven safe ramekins instead. So we've got our fruit in there, and now all we need to do is add the cream cheese mixture. And just try to divide it fairly evenly on top of the fruit. It's all right if there's a little bit of fruit peeking out, but you do want to try and cover it fairly uniformly. Because these dishes are so small, our cheesecakes are also going to bake up really quickly. And if you wanted to, you could prepare them to this point before lunch and then just bake them up shortly before serving time if you wanted to serve them warm. I like my cheesecakes just below warm, but warmer than room temperature. That seems to be the optimum for flavor. So now we've got our dishes all filled, and we're going to put them on a baking tray. This step is only to make them easier to get in and out of the oven because they're so small they can be hard to handle with oven mitts. And we're going to slide them in this mini oven because we don't need to heat up the big oven for something so small. Now I like to add lemon juice, and we can always put that in the batter or we can drizzle it on the top when they come out. So that's what we're going to do today. So we've got some lemon juice all ready. Now I've got some cheesecakes already prepared, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to add the crust and get them all finished. So they're nicely set. You can see they've just cracked a little bit. That's a sign of a thoroughly cooked cheesecake. So now I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of lemon on each one. By adding it in at the end, you're going to get a bit more of a pop, and that blueberry and lemon combo is just so nice together. You could also put it in at the jam layer if you prefer. Now our crust is a pretty great, easy trick. You just take your favorite ginger cookie, or an oatmeal cookie is good too. They want to be fairly soft. You don't want ones that are going to snap. And you're going to crumble them with your fingers. It's easiest if you do this into a dish rather than over your cheesecakes. So we're going to crumble up probably about 4 or 5 cookies for the size of these ramekins. And you can do this ahead of time as well. Just make sure you put on a lid on the dish so that they don't get too stale. These are actually my grandmother's ginger cookies. I love this recipe, and it's probably one of my family's favorites. They also make great ice cream sandwiches, or if you put salted caramel frosting in between them, they make a really good cookie sandwich. So now we've got our cookies all crumbled. I like to just put the topping on by hand to make sure that the crumbs are evenly distributed. And that's all you need to do to get this crust on your cheesecakes. And don't worry about the size of the lumps. They're all spoon or bite-sized anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfectly uniform. You just want to put on enough to kind of cover the cheesecake mixture, just as though it was an upside down with the crust on the bottom. And then you should probably serve them within the hour just so the cookies don't start to get soggy. And that's all you need to do to make these great upside down mini cheesecakes, the perfect lunchtime treat. The next time you think you don't have time to put together a delicious lunch, why not consider this beautiful miso soup that takes less than 10 minutes, the delicious Vietnamese banh mi bread salad, and perhaps these wonderful mini cheesecakes that are so fast to prepare. It'll be the perfect fuel for the middle of your day.